Phase 2 of Season of Discovery is well underway, giving us tons of new content, runes, gear, profession items, and so much more. As expected, despite data mining, there have been so many new things to discover which we didn't know about at all pre-release of the phase, and having now checked out a bunch of the content myself, I thought it would be good to share some tips which might help you out, whether it's for pushing your mains through those last few levels up to 40, or on an alt if perhaps you've been missing out on something. I'll also be covering a few general points for the level 25 to 40 bracket too, which you may want to keep in mind whatever point you're at in the game. So with that said, let's begin. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is an epic military action free-to-play multiplayer game available on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Mac. It has combat on land, air, and seas and takes you through over a century of vehicle progression and tactics. War Thunder provides players with an expansive battlefield where they can engage in fierce combat using a diverse range of military equipment, from World War II era tanks to modern-day fighter jets. War Thunder also has a unique damage model that eliminates the need for traditional health bars. Instead, every hit on an enemy vehicle has realistic consequences, such as disabling tracks or igniting fuel tanks. This puts strategy over brute force into combat. The big recent update for War Thunder is Air Superiority, bringing new advanced vehicles into the game such as the T-90M or the Su-27. There is also a new map, Volcano Valley, inspired by Kamchatka, which allows you to test the latest aircrafts in battles among volcanoes. There's never been a better time to start, and at the moment all new players and those who haven't played War Thunder for half a year or more will receive some special bonuses, including rentals for the P-40E1 aircraft and M4 tank for a week, along with 3 unique skins for them, a special decorator Eagle of Valor, 100,000 Silver Lions, 3 premium vehicles for a week of premium account, and even more gifts. And you can check this out via the link in the description. Many thanks to War Thunder for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. So before the release of Phase 2, Blizzard said there were going to be new ways to gain experience to offset for the fact that players had decided to keep questing for gold in Phase 1. So how good are these new methods of gaining experience? Well, first of all is the fact that between levels 1 and 25 there is now a persistent 50% experience buff in the game. So if you didn't quite finish off leveling something, it's extremely fast to catch up for Phase 2 content. And with the amount of layers out in the world, low-level questing is practically uncontested, and I could very much foresee this 50% experience buff being extended to future phases as the level cap goes up. The second new way to gain experience was through the Black Fathoms Deep raid, where the bosses will now grant XP, and a full completion is about 23 to 25,000 experience or thereabouts. However, Black Fathoms Deep is still on a 3-day lockout, but if you do it at level 25, that's going to give you the majority of a level, and for something which takes about 30 or so minutes to get through, it's definitely very worth doing. Third is the fact that the waylaid supplies which drop between levels 25 and 40 will now also grant a chunk of XP, and yeah, I would not count on these as being a good way to level up. A lot of the boxes are just prohibitively expensive to fill due to the high demand for raw materials at the moment, so I'd think of these as just being more a way to advance your reputation with the Azeroth Commerce Authority or Joritar Supply and Logistics. For me, as somebody who had done a lot of pre-questing in Phase 1, I went and handed in my quests, it got me midway through 26, I did BFD, that got me to 27, and then I just went and grinded Stockades to level 30 and went back to my regular questing. But speaking of the new reputations, you'll remember in Phase 1 they had a rune locked behind Honored, so everyone kind of had to get it done. Well, until they lowered the requirement to friendly, that was. In Phase 2, comparatively, there isn't much of a need to push to Revered anytime soon. The main unlock you get at Revered is the recipe for the Lesser Arcane Elixir, which alchemists can make, and that's just a new raid consumable, and that is pretty much it. Another change is you can have up to 12 waylaid supplies at any given time between your bank and your bags, up from 1. Personally, I just banked them as I leveled, then went on to see which ones felt cost efficient to fill, because some of them, like Mithril Blunderbuss for example, would be over 10 gold to fill, and I'm not about to do that. Still, in a future phase, this reputation will surely go to Exalted, and at that point in time you have to imagine there's going to be some pretty cool rewards behind it, so do work towards this at least on your main. It's just you don't need to rush it at all. Next is a quick one, and just a reminder really, if you did your faction's Warsong Gulch reputation during phase 1, there will be level 38 versions of the neck and rings at Honored and weapons at Revered that you can buy. These are pretty easy upgrades to put on once you're getting to a higher level, so you might as well go and grab them. Also, the weekly event for Ashenvale, we just need to loot that item from any enemy faction NPC, will still award 1000 rep at level 40. It was bugged at the start of phase 2 to give 100, but if you do it from here on out, it'll give 1000 again. Next is about gold income. Well, I thought Blizzard were gonna go easy on us because, you know, it's a seasonal server and all that. We don't need to put excessive gold sinks in the game, right? Well, it turns out actually there are going to be a bunch of gold sinks at level 40, so having a gathering character or just a class you can farm gold on is not a bad idea. Mount costs were put back up from 40 gold to 80 once again just before the patch dropped, and a bunch of the new endgame profession recipes will set you back 25 gold each, and the ranks of your abilities start to get quite a bit more expensive between 25 and 42. Saying that, bonus gold from quests in some cases is up to 4 gold from elite quests at level 40, and items such as elemental fire, earth, all those kind of things are still dropping from your standard herb and mining nodes. So if you don't mind carrying on questing and gathering after level 40, you should be okay in terms of how much gold you can make, but just know that Blizzard have up to the amount of gold sinks in the game. Next is about the quest for the cozy sleeping bag. In short, it's a lot of running across the world, but it's well worth doing, because if you do it when you're leveling, the quest by itself, as in the whole series, will already give about 15,000 experience, which isn't half bad. You'll also get 8 rations of student fodder. Each of these will give you 20% of a total level worth of rested XP, and this appears to be 20% of your bar whichever level you're at, so it gains much more value when it's used towards level 40. And if you're trying to get the most out of them, I'll probably start using them around mid-level 36 to 37. The item does have a 30-minute cooldown though, you can't just pop them all at once. I would make use of the student fodder in phase 2 because who knows, Blizzard might not like people saving them for later phases, and they could easily amend a food-related item to say it's gone bad after having sat in your backpack for such a long period of time. Now, if you did this quest at level 40, obviously you don't get to benefit from the fodder, but on the flip side, with bonus gold kicking in, you probably made around 12 gold or so, which again isn't bad. As for the fodder, maybe you can use them next phase, but again, something tells me Blizzard isn't gonna like people excessively preparing for the future. And of course, at the end of the quest, you get the cozy sleeping bag, which when rested in for 3 minutes will give a 3% bonus to all XP gains for 3 hours, and this effect does persist through death. 3% will add up. It may not be super noticeable during this bracket, but 40 to 50 and especially 50 to 60 is a lot of XP, so it'll save you a few hours probably. For me, I'm going to be doing this quest on all of my alts for sure, and I think the main benefit of it at the moment is the fodder, just to get those last levels out of the way nice and fast. Again, it's a lot of running, but I think it's totally worth doing, so do look that one up. Moving on, I have the Stranglethorn Vale event, and it is predictably absolutely brutal. If you haven't checked in on it yet, it occurs at midnight and every 3 hours thereafter, and much like Ashenvale when that first came out, it's already undergone several different changes. Well, PvP is just so difficult to get right in this game when it's so inherently unfair, and players will do whatever it takes to get the rewards in the most degen ways. Initially, players were able to just basically graveyard camp and farm people, enabling them to earn the rewards from the event super fast. But Blizzard didn't like that. Now when you res instead, you're pacified and invisible for 20 seconds. The goal of this is to allow you to escape the death ball and res up and recover, but then other people just phase out of invisibility next to you and it just turns into a bunch of skirmishes. But hey, I think it's an improvement over what it was at least. The idea behind the event is it of course being free for all, but realistically you need to be part of a 5-player group to get much done, otherwise you're pretty much voluntarily offering yourself up as a sacrifice to the roaming 5-man gank squads. Maybe you can get some good results solo if you're playing a god tier PvP class such as a Shadow Priest, but for the rest of us mere mortals, you probably do want to be finding a group. And it has gone a bit under the radar as well, but regular NPCs defeated during the event also grant 1 blood, and quite often, at least in my experience, there are groups forming who basically just form a 5-man and then go to an out of the way area and farm NPCs during the event. The idea is that you pick somewhere that's far enough away from altars and just PvP hotspots, where it's unlikely that people go out of their way to hunt you down. So you're not hard forced to do PvP to get the rewards after all, but it's probably going to take you a bit longer doing it this way. It's also worth a mention because I know we're early on into the phase, but the type of PvP on offer in this event is just not casual friendly. And if you're in STV and you're a lower level, you're going to get farmed and there isn't much you can do about it. The event even makes Flight Masters aggro in Booty Bay, so try not to right click them by accident either. I've seen that happen once or twice. You can turn the event off at Zandalari emissaries, and Blizzard just added a bunch more of them into the game now, including ones in Tirisfal Glades, Ratchet, Booty Bay, and more. They're all over the place. Basically, before you get into Stranglethorn Vale, you're probably going to see one of these trolls with a huge blood type icon over their head. Talk to them and they will disable the event for you. This just turns off free for all, however. Opposite faction players can, and probably will, still attack you. And when you turn it off on a PvE server, you will still be flagged for 5 minutes. But yeah, the event so far is definitely trending towards being friendly for more higher level players. You should group if you really want in, and above all, you should not expect it to be particularly fair or even balanced, because that's WoW PvP in a nutshell. Next is to look out for upgraded items when running dungeons. Now these upgraded items are aimed basically in their entirety towards casters, hybrid DPS, and healers. If you're a physical damage dealer, there kind of just isn't anything new because your item options are already pretty good. And caster gear comparatively sucks, but modern Blizzard understands itemization better, so they've gone and updated a bunch of things and given them some spell power. So if you missed out on BFD loot and you're feeling behind, you're going to have plenty of chances for upgrades between 25 and 40. A number of items in all these Scarlet Monastery dungeons, Razorfen Downs, and even a few in Alderman have received updated stats, so keep an eye out for them. And I'd recommend getting the Atlas loot add-on for Season of Discovery too, just so you can have a bit of an advanced look about what can drop. It's a similar story with crafting professions. A huge number of items have received updates from tailoring, leatherworking, and blacksmithing. So whatever your armor type or spec, providing you're a caster of course, you should be able to find decent upgrades for not unreasonable prices when it comes to the updated items. Again, Atlas Loot Season of Discovery is great here, would very much recommend. And if you needed another reason to go and run dungeons, we have the skill and or quality of life books that have been added in Phase 2. These range from things which are kind of nice to have, such as reducing the cost and increasing the duration of Power Word Fortitude or Arcane Intellect, to completely game-changing abilities like an out-of-combat resurrection for druids, summoning portal for warlocks, Shadow Fiend for priests, or a very powerful version of Aspect of the Viper for hunters. And there isn't a ton of discovering which needs to be done on these either, as Blizzard has put basically every single book in the game that I'm aware of either on Interrogator Vicious, that's the first boss in Scarlet Monastery Graveyard, or Blood Mage Thanos, who is the second and final boss of the same dungeon. Now the books can drop from the rare spawns inside the graveyard too, and reportedly have a chance to drop from bosses in the other Scarlet Monastery dungeons too, but Graveyard seems to be the place to go to get them. I can say on my lock I got each of the 2 books off the 2 bosses in SM Graveyard, so worked for me. So what I'm saying is, you should do Scarlet Monastery Graveyard at some point between 25 and 40, it's very worth doing to get your quality of life bucks. And finally, I want to bring something up which I think is worth talking about as kind of a general point for a seasonal server with class changes being a main theme to it, and that's the idea of getting used to having a main character again. We are playing vanilla, things are slower paced, and it's worth considering your main pick for more reasons than I just want to be the best at doing this one thing all the time. More so than ever in World of Warcraft before, you should pick something you know you're gonna like even if you're not always the best. Again, this is the first time playing Classic where we cannot be very sure of what will be the best due to the new runes and class balancing. In every version of Classic so far, we've been able to make a pretty good educated guess as to what will be top of the meters. In Season of Discovery, one phase you might feel like a king and the next one you're like a peasant in the fields. And Classic is a game where typically you cannot raid like half a dozen different characters simply because everything takes so long to do. Time to level, to find the runes, to farm consumes, to farm gold, gathering world buffs and so on. And coming off the back of Wrath of the Lich King where Blizzard made every single effort possible to allow you to reroll on a dime, vanilla is a huge paradigm shift. Sure, we're only level 40 now, but the levels are going to keep going up, and the thing you have picked to play and invested all that time into just may or may not be as good as you anticipated, and you're gonna have to be okay with that. In Wrath of the Lich King, you can boost a character with real money and then get boosted in-game straight into heroics, scammers, and then raid within the space of a week. Well, you have to grind it out a bit, but it's very much possible. One does not simply re-roll from one main to another within the space of a week in vanilla, even with mage boosting. Things take time, and your main character is probably going to remain your main for a long time to come. So just be ready for the changes and pick something because you know you can have a good time playing it, even if it is not the best at everything. I'm saying this now because Blizzard rightfully just took a huge amount of power out of Star Surge for balanced druids, and they've tried to redistribute that power into Starfire. Results may vary for how successful the change was, but having an instant cast 6-second cooldown spell that crits for over 1,000 just isn't gonna fly. Shadow Word Death is gonna be next, by the way, alongside Melee Hunter's damage, if both of those things haven't already happened by the time this video's out. But yeah, buffs are gonna happen, nerfs are gonna happen, and it's hard to reroll or just play multiple characters in vanilla due to the high time investment needed. Or you can always just play a warrior, surely that's the safe pick, right? Well, you'd think so, but some bosses in Gnomeregan have more armor than Molten Core bosses, if what I've heard is correct. So we just don't know what Blizzard has cooking for the future. What I'm trying to say is don't overly chase the meta to play what is very good each single phase, because I think you're gonna burn yourself out on the seasonal server. Pick something you think looks cool, and if you want to min-max it after that, have fun doing that, but re-rolling excessively is pretty tricky to do unless you have a lot of free time. And that's it for the video. Let me know your impressions on Phase 2 so far. I've been enjoying it a lot myself. The extra talents and new rune combinations have me thinking about a lot of different playstyles that are now opening up, and it's always fun to try and figure out some niche build that lets you do a difficult quest or a particular gold farm. If you made it to the end of the video, do consider dropping a sub on the channel, as I will be covering and breaking down all major Season of Discovery news right here. And finally, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.